So the idea of the Staties 360 is to widen our horizons at Staties and for our users beyond the absolutely dedicated DOE package DESIGNEXPERT into some more advanced types of things that are great for data analysts and more advanced DOE practitioners. So what we have in particular to start with, and this will expand later, but the most important new tool that will come with 360 are these space filling designs and then associated modeling tools called Gaussian process models. And this makes the most from computer experiments that are generally deterministic in their outcomes. Another big feature that's coming in that will really extend the power of DESIGNEXPERT is Python scripting. And this has been a very popular way to expand into a whole world of new tools. And Python has become a very popular programming tool throughout the world. And this has been greeted with a lot of excitement from our early adopters. And then there's other advanced features for data analysts. At this point, it's fairly esoteric or fairly niche type features, but as time goes along, we'll continue to build in big features like these space filling and the Python scripting. So to begin with, it's important to understand that this Staties 360 software encompasses all of the world-class version 13 of DESIGNEXPERT that makes design of experiments really easy and yet very powerful. The DESIGNEXPERT tools provide experiment design, analysis, modeling, and very useful graphical displays. And these tools are excellent for screening for vital few factors, characterizing your process for the interactions, which are oftentimes the key to success, and then achieving optimization of your processes. We also have very important tools for formulators that are designed for mixtures in particular, and that's a specialty of Staties. Included in version 13 as an upgrade is a much more powerful import tool where you can take pre-existing data, bring it into DESIGNEXPERT and make use of all its wonderful tools to develop models and to see what you can do to optimize your process or product or combination of process and product. And there's much, much more. So I thought what I would do to start with is just give a feature tour of the DESIGNEXPERT tools that are incorporated in 360 before we talk about the advanced tools that 360 adds, on top of everything else. So I'm going to Alt-Tab over, and here we see the splash screen for Staties 360. And now to begin with, there's some different things you could do. If you were really at a very beginning point, there is a design wizard available that helps you decide where you might land. For example, if you want to do a screening of a process and get in the fewest runs, information on main effects only, you would click this particular button. And then as you move forward, you can see that we have actually screening tools for formulators that are part of the mixture design capabilities. But most people would start off probably with what's called a factorial design, and more than likely it would be a two-level factorial design, which can accommodate either numeric or categoric factors. So that would be a choice that you could pick. In DESIGNEXPERT and the core of Staties 360, we have some very advanced tools that are called split plot that allow you to contend with factors that are hard to change, such as oven temperature, that would group things together. However, if possible, of course, it's always better to totally randomize the order. So I'm just going to say in this wizard that I'm running through that there aren't any hard to change factors. Let's assume that. And then you can, do a mix of numeric and categoric, for example. And this brings you into, various, portions of the program. Now, what I'm going to do is apply, some knowledge, which is very important. And I would advise that you learn about these design of experiments tools, by making use of all the ability to learn that we provide off our Staties website or the training classes. But really a good place to start, I think I'll overcome the wizard here, would be this regular 2-level factorial design, which is the classical 2 to the K that were developed way back when by Ronald Fisher in the fields of agriculture. They're still tried and true. And this stoplight configured design builder is extremely helpful. Now, as a process development engineer, I would typically do 16 run blocks, and I would take, time, temperature, concentration, stirring rate. I would look at various things that the organic chemist provided as a starting point, and then gradually scale up from bench, through the pilot plant up to the manufacturing site. And one of the nice abilities we have with this design builder is we can do what are called fractional 2-level designs. And because of the color coding, we can see, what the quality of it is. And one of my favorite designs is this one here with 5 factors and 16 runs. It's a 1/2 fraction. And this would be a design meant to characterize a process. However, a starting point might be first to do a broad and shallow screening, which goes into the yellow zone. And then we could cut all the way over here to this 8 and 16 option, which is a good design. We can screen 8 factors to see if maybe there's a few that might be carried forward to the characterization in only 16 runs. Now, once you get beyond 8 factors on the 16 run row, then you hit the red zone, which are good for ruggedness testing, but it's kind of like kicking your TV to make it work. So if you had 9 factors and you wanted to do a screening, you then would have to depart this classical 2-level design builder and go to a more modern tool, which is over here, called minimum run screen. And this design option is going to use an optimal screening template that we developed over a period of time that actually includes a couple of extra runs in case any of the experiments go bad. It even so, it only takes 20 runs, where the regular 2-level design, you'd have to go down to 32 runs with 9 factors. So 20 runs for the minimum run screen versus having to do 32 with the regular 2-level. So there's a huge advantage to using DESIGNEXPERT and Staties 360, which encompasses DESIGNEXPERT, for this process screening and characterizing. And we also have the characterizing minimum run tool here as well. We have multi-level categoric options. You can do, any number of factors with any number of levels. So you could do a design that has, 2 types of A and 3 types of B and 4 types of C. So this is called a general factorial and multi-level categoric. Now, as the runs increase when you're doing just this general factorial, we then start to get into optimal custom designs as an option to reduce the number of runs, in this case from 120 down to only 51, even including some additional lack of hit points. So throughout the program, in the different types of designs like the factorial, response surface, mixture, you're going to see we always have this option of optimal custom. And ultimately, we have the ability to do, a really big experiment that incorporates different types of factors. Like you could mix up a cake with butter, flour, sugar, and eggs. That would be a 4-component mixture. You could bake it at different times and temperatures. That would be 2 numeric factors. You could do it in 2 different ovens. One might be electric and one might be gas. And then even you could put frosting on the top with a number of ingredients. And this would be a design that could be built using DESIGNEXPERT. So pretty much you can do anything you would like for your experiment. It's just a matter of using the right tools within DESIGNEXPERT. I mentioned also that we have the capability in DESIGNEXPERT and Staties 360, which incorporates DESIGNEXPERT, to deal with hard to change factors. And so these would be under the split plot options, which are not completely randomized. And you can see that we have lots of split plot capabilities for factorials, The split plot, which handles hard to change factors, also can be run in the context of a response surface method optimization. And you can either use a standard central composite or optimal custom. And then a nice way to do a split plot would be if you have a mixture process experiment. Oftentimes, in that case, it's going to be convenient to either batch the mixture part. In this case, let's just say we do a pound cake with butter, sugar, flour, and eggs. And we're making 1 pound. And then we're going to go from some level of each, let's say 0.2 pounds to 0.3 pounds. And we could mix up this pound cake in a little mortar and pestle, for example, and make up a little cake according to a certain recipe. But then when we go in the oven, we don't want to just do one little pound cake per oven. We want to batch a whole bunch of them per oven. So in this case, let's assume that the oven is the thing that's hard, because you got to bring it up to temperature and run the cake for some time. And then you would run your cake, and excuse me for using English units here, but let's say I'm going to go with degrees F just because I'm familiar with that here in the States. And we're going to go for so many minutes. And this just shows you how easy it is to set up an experiment of any nature. And then using optimal design, we can make a bunch of cakes and then determine the taste of it. And let's say that we're going to use a hedonic index of 1 being really bad tasting and 9 being really good tasting. And then the program will search out using algorithms, an optimal design that will accomplish this. So I'm going to let this work a little bit. You can see that it's going through quite a lot of searches here before it comes up with the final design. And let's see if it can come up with something. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so now we've set up this little pound cake. We have some really advanced rounding features that are going to be very helpful here to make this a little easier to run. And so now I'm just rounding this. And so we can see that we're making up different formulations of the cake. And then we're going to bake it in a batch, at different times and temperatures. And of course, I could round this a little bit as well. So that just gives you a quick run through of how powerful the core of STATI 360 is using the DESIGNEXPERT engine. And I could spend quite a bit more time showing you features. There's just an incredible amount that we have available. So that would be the main reason to purchase STATI 360, is for that core of features that comes with the DESIGNEXPERT engine. And certainly experimenters will do very well by working with this DOE dedicated program. You're going to do far better with DESIGNEXPERT or 360 as an upgrade than you would with a general stats package, just simply because you're not distracted with all these other tools that you don't need. So really, it's the right tool for the job. As you can see, it's pretty easy. It would take some training, of course. You'd want to run through the whole set of tutorials that we have and so forth. It's fast and very effective, and it's really good for any industrial R&D. And this could be any company that manufactures anything. Certainly, it's particularly helpful in process industries. The food, like the application I showed you, pharmaceutical is hugely popular with giant companies like GlaxoSmithKline. It's good for the paint and coatings industry, and you go on and on with all the process industries. You need to be using design of experiments, and using DESIGNEXPERT, or better yet 360, definitely will put you far ahead of your competition. However, it's equally helpful for other types of products that are hard goods, like automotive, electronic, There's a famous study that was laid out by the expert in design of experiments, George Box, who succeeded Ronald Fisher as his son-in-law and carried into response surface methods. And George Box would always point out one of the best multi-factor testing examples is from SKF in Sweden, and how they used it, the two-level factorial design, to make a breakthrough in their bearings and fight off the Japanese competition and save the day. So any of the industries that are doing any kind of R&D should be using multi-factor DOE, mixture design if it's a formulation issue, and we have just the software to do the job. So now let's talk about Statis 360 and the advanced tools that it provides above and beyond DESIGNEXPERT. And one of the most important things that it's adding that I think is very exciting are tools for design of experiments on computer simulations. I've been involved with the use of our software for computer simulations for some decades now. And originally, my first connection was with General Electric back in the mid-1990s. And I was working with the engineers with the Power Systems group in South Carolina that had a finite element analysis simulator of their turbines. And they were able to use DESIGNEXPERT's response surface methods tools against the simulator. They would try the different conditions that DESIGNEXPERT recommended, get the results via the simulation, put that in DESIGNEXPERT, and then it fitted what they called a transfer function that made it much simpler for them to design the final turbine and bring it out into the field. So because the individual simulations are so time consuming, it pays to generate these transfer functions, which are polynomial models. And one of the standard models you have is to predict your response as a function of the input main effects, let's say x sub 1 and let's say x sub 2, the interaction of the two, which is really critical, which is a two-factor interaction, but then also squared terms. And this would be the beginning of a response surface method. And this function is called a quadratic, and it's a second order polynomial. But we can fit up to 6th order. And when you get that high in the order, then you can approximate just about any surface. So just the ordinary least squares polynomial models are very useful. However, it is a little bit odd when you have a deterministic outcome to be applying tools that are meant for variation. And so then going above and beyond DESIGNEXPERT, our programmers develop more specific tools to get better designs that are more space filling, and then tools to model, which are the Gaussian process models. So with the computer sims that are deterministic, of course, we don't need to do replication because there is no pure error. So there's no need to estimate the error. There's less emphasis on customizing to a specific model, such as the quadratic that I just detailed, and more on covering the region. So the designs are better off being space filling rather than optimal for a particular model. Statis 360 then provides some excellent options for space filling. One of them is been around for a long time, and a very popular design for space filling is called the Latin hypercube. And I'll give you a demonstration of that. Another one that is really useful, that is especially important and unique to programs like DESIGNEXPERT and now 360 are these optimal distance type tools, and we've refined for 360 we refined these options specifically for the computer sims. So now I'm going to go over to Statis 360, and you can see from my little notes here that I'm going to build up a Latin hypercube 16.6, 6 by 16 rows by 16 columns And this is one that I also talk about in my book, RSM Simplified. And then I'll look at the graph columns and color by so that we can see the structure of that. Then I'll follow up and rebuild it with this optimal distance. So let me make a shot at doing that. So what I'm going to do then is I'll close off this design. We'll start up a new design, and I'm going down to this new tab, which doesn't show up in DESIGNEXPERT at all, called Space Filling. And you can see the information about this design being a special type of space filling. And what's unique about this is that it will set the design up with a special projection property in which no levels of any particular factor are replicated. So let's go with this design, and we'll go from low of 1 to a high of 16. Let's say 16 levels of each factor. And we have some sort of response. We'll just leave that generic. And so now we have a design laid out, and it's in randomized order that you would run against the simulator. The randomized order probably isn't going to matter for the simulator. So we could just do this in some kind of a standard order. So that's not something to be too concerned with working with the computer, more than likely, I would think. And then we can see how the structure of this is. If you cut across any row here, you can see there's only one design. And if we cut across any column, and let's just say color by A, and so we can see the progression along the bottom here from left to right, that A is represented, only once in each column. And then color by B, we're looking, from the top to the bottom on the B axis and seeing, how this lays out. So it's a really excellent tool for space filling, and this is the first time that STADIS has been able to present this to its users now with this 360. Now let's just say that we rebuild this and we want to try this other option, which is the optimal distance. And this is, really awesome capability of the computer to provide an algorithm that will take care of this for us. And so now we're going to build this, let's say, by distance only, as opposed to the model base, because as I mentioned, for the computer simulations of the deterministic outcomes, it makes more sense, just to go for that space filling and do some kind of mini-max, type approach here to fill in space. So we can say, exactly how many runs we want. That would be the space filling. Another option you could apply is, go with a model based, and I'm actually going to show this because it's so amazing, what we can do with the program STADIS 360 is we could do this, for upwards of a 6th order model, as I mentioned. So let's do it this way. And probably rounding would not be, an issue because the computer doesn't care if the values are rounded. So I'm just going to leave it that way. And here we go. So now we've really gone all out. If the computer simulations were not quite so expensive, and if you were expecting a fairly high level function, or you're going to use the Gaussian process modeling, which is the next thing I'll demonstrate, you might go ahead and try to get, more of a space filling design than what we had before. So the choice of the design is, going to be up to the users. There's pros and cons of the different options of the Latin hypercube versus the optimal distance, and then the option of model-based. So that gives you a quick run through of what we have, and we're looking forward to people starting to make use of this, and then we'll, learn more and more about, what's popular with people that are applying experiment design for computer simulations. Now, another capability we have is on the modeling that relates to the computer simulations. And we've added this tool called Gaussian process modeling, or GPM. Now, what this does is it fits all the responses exactly, but it provides a smoothing, which you can vary with some parameters that you can adjust the amount of smoothing. And it's become very popular for deterministic computer simulations, as opposed to using the more old-fashioned transfer functions that I was mentioning that the General Electric engineers use for their finite element analysis. For example, I found in Myers, Montgomery, and Anderson Cook's book on response surface methodology, third edition, an example that demonstrates Gaussian process modeling to a computational fluid dynamic CFD simulation of exhaust temperatures taken at various locations in the plume of a jet engine. So this whole approach of using DOE against deterministic computer simulations is very popular in aerospace, as now we're seeing, going against turbines, which could be used for jet engines in my prior discussion in here with the exhaust temperatures. But I think there's many other areas that it could be used, and I'll mention another example in just a moment. So STATES 360 makes it easier to apply this Gaussian process model. And then what's really wonderful about our tool is that you can do multiple response optimization and look for sweet spots where all the requirements can be met. So to begin with, let's go back to the STATES 360, and I'm going to close out this current design. And then I want to point out that we have tremendous help under the covers with a couple dozen of different tutorials, from very simple one-factor design through two-level factorial, discussion of the use of split plot, response surface methods, split plot for RSM, which is another aerospace, then mixture design, a lot of different bells and whistles on the mixture design, and then the use of our product to bring in pre-existing data, and so forth and so on. And we have, tremendous advanced tools such as logistic regression, Poisson regression. But what I want to do is focus on this Gaussian process model and just show you the tutorial on that. So here, once you get the program on trial, you'll have the ability to look at this tutorial and try it on your computer. And it's a case study on a gas station. And this one, a Latin hypercube design is deployed. And here again is a pattern of the Latin hypercube design that has only one, combination in each row and in each column. And then the Gaussian process model, and this is an example of a fitting for the average wait time as a function of number of pumps in the gas station and the tank size. And you can see that every point is fitted exactly. So that's an example. Now I can open up the file. So we'll go back to DESIGNEXPERT, and there's a file associated with the tutorial for the gas station. I'm opening that up. And there's some information here about this study. The cost response is $20, $20,000, I think, per pump, and $250,000 for the smallest tank, up to $400,000. So cost is being taken into account here in this last column. And this is a feature of the program. You can enter in a cost equation. So just to see what that looks like, the cost equation, just so we know what we're dealing with. And now we can see the location of the different test points that we did, and the actual costs that are associated with that are shown. And then this is just, showing that as the tank size goes up and the number of pumps goes up, of course, the cost goes up. So that's already been fitted. But let's look at the average wait time. And now we could fit this a couple different ways at this point. And I thought it might be interesting to use the ordinary least square model to start with. So using the normal modeling, we can see that DESIGNEXPERT has 360, the DESIGNEXPERT engine at 360 has recommended the use of quadratic suffices. And so it's automatically suggested. And then, the program provides you with a typical p-value you get with the analysis of variance. And it's actually a pretty good fit based on these fit statistics and everything I'm seeing so far. Now we go to the actual fitting of it and look at it in 3D. But you notice that it's not fitting the points exactly, of course, because it's assuming that there's variation in the results. But the fact of the matter is it's deterministic. And this function would actually work pretty well as a transfer function. And I think it'd be excellent to do this, to save money on continually having to do simulations and just approximate what's going on within a certain region by using this function, which is a polynomial. However, with the new features in 360, we can use something more advanced that fits exactly, and it's called a Gaussian process model. Now there's various smoothing parameters. It's been already pre-selected using a maximum likelihood algorithm. I'm just going to leave that because I'm not going to try to guess at it, but you would be able to override that if you wanted to. And now we're just going to go directly to our surface, and here it is. And you can compare this surface to what we had with the polynomial model transfer function, and you can see that the Gaussian process model, surface is much more sophisticated. Now, which model to use is up to the user, okay? Because it's the old saying that George Box had, that all models are wrong, but some are useful. It's going to behoove the experimenter to think about which model is most useful and make their own decision on that. And certainly neither of these models is right. Even the Gaussian process model, of course, is just filling in gaps with a smoothing algorithm, between the points that it tested. But let's say that then you decide that you want to go with the Gaussian process model. And so what you could do is you could look at this average wait time. You could, do a fitting of the amount of vehicles that are abandoned. I guess if there was like a gas shortage, I remember being in England when there was a strike by the people working at the ports, and gas was totally running out, and people would line up and just leave their cars after a while. So this is actually the vehicles abandoned, and there's some other metrics we could look at. But then you can use the tool of the multiple response optimization to work out what you want to do in terms of the results here. And I'm going to go with this, and let's say this one, and then we want to minimize the wait time. We want to minimize the vehicles abandoned, and then there would be some kind of a solution that would come into play here. And I'm just going to go back to the tutorial here because I don't know what to put in for these thresholds. But as you work through the tutorial on this, you would see, that there's parameters entered in. And in this case, the optimizer finds a solution that says 10 pumps, a certain size for the tank. And that should give you overall, well, cost needs to be considered as well. So the tutorial, brings it to a head, with all the responses considered. So that gives you a run through of tools that are used for DOE on computer simulations with deterministic outcome. So we have designs that are specifically aimed at that, and we have models that are specifically aimed as well, along with the traditional option of the polynomial models that can be used as transfer functions. So that's still in play. So then I just wanted to say, as a chemical engineer, that it's not just aerospace and companies that are making hard good products, electronics and things like that, but also process industries are making use of these computer simulations. And so I came across this quote from Liam Fleming, who's a graduate PhD student in UK, and he gave a talk for the European Network of Business and Industrial Statistics, NBIS, on the use of DOE for computer simulations. And he was mentioning how on-plant experimentation is very costly and time-consuming. So approximating digital twins, which I thought was kind of a neat way of describing a simulation, is very useful. And then applying a designed experiment against your simulation, and then using the Gaussian, process regression model is going to provide a very useful tool for people that are working on process industries and using these simulations. So I expect there's going to be a lot of application of the STADIS 360 tool for the design and analysis of computer simulations. And I'm looking forward to people, particularly out in the field, and maybe it'll be some of you that are listening to this presentation that'll make use of this. And we hope to hear back from you on what you've done so that we can share best practices, with other users. So the final words are that, these tools in STADIS 360 will leverage the use of computer simulations by allowing you to, save time on very costly runs on the simulator, developing a function and using that to make your final design. For more details on these tools, see the space filling designs and Gaussian process models for computer experiments by Martin Bessener, who's our president and PhD statistician, which we'll be posting soon at this site. In fact, he's giving it this morning at the same time I'm giving this presentation, but it'll be posted soon, and I would highly recommend, if you're interested, to bring up that presentation in recorded format. Okay, the second big thing that I'm bringing up on STADIS 360, and there's more to STADIS 360 that I won't get into, but I'm very excited about the Python scripting capabilities. And this has probably created the greatest buzz from our beta testers and early adopters of STADIS 360, because Python has become incredibly popular as a tool for doing statistical analysis and general data analysis, which is tremendously important and hugely popular at this point to try to do the data analytics and across all endeavors. Of course, not just industrial, but sports, is a big area that analytics are being applied. So being able to extend the DESIGNEXPERT core tools via the bridge of STADIS 360 into the Python ecosystem is tremendous for visualizing, analyzing, and making the most of your data, automating routine processes, and then connecting with other software packages as a bridge with the Python or whatever. There's a tremendous amount of possibilities, and we're just looking forward to seeing what people do with this new Python scripting. And again, once we learn more about it, we'll be able to share and give more use cases, and we'll just continue to build up, the ability of STADIS 360 and our education that's associated with it. Now, I'm not a programmer, so there's two things I'm not. I'm not a statistician, and I'm not a programmer. So what I am is a good experimentalist, because I've been doing design of experiments for decades and decades. And so that's something that I can relate to. So I would be looking for, somebody that's really good at Python if it was me doing industrial R&D and not try to be the expert on every single thing. So I'm just going to show you a few things on the software and run a very simple script that just prints hello world. And that's about the extent of what I'm going to be able to demonstrate. But there could be people here in the audience that are already, lighting up and thinking, oh, I could work with this, or figure out, who they can talk to that will help them do what they want to do. So the Python scripting is up here with this icon. This is the logo for Python. And in the tutorials, as I mentioned, we've got lots of information down here, but there is one that was written up by our head programmer, Hank Anderson, who's my number 2 son, and I'm very proud of what he's done. And Hank is a wizard at programming, and he's really good with Python in addition. So I would definitely recommend, if you're willing to tackle this and you're not daunted by programming, is you go through this little tutorial, which is what I did to install Python. I was able to work through his instructions and get it installed on my computer, and then begin to consider how this could be used for different applications. But I think definitely you would want to look through this tutorial, get the free trial download if you're interested in applying Python, and go through this tutorial, and you'll have a much more sophisticated demonstration of it than anything I can do per se. And I'll give you a link in just a minute to another video of a presentation by Hank that will show amazing things that you can do. So all I'm going to do is something really simple. And I'm just going to take this little command that I've written out here, print hello world, and I'm going to put that in and see if I can make Python work. So I've copied this to the clipboard, and now I've put it here. And now I'm going to do file run. And look at that. I made it say hello world. So hello world, hello group that's listening to this, and in the future of the recording, I greet you. So that's my big demonstration. All right, well, obviously a person needs to be pretty adept at programming. They need to learn about Python scripting, but there's a lot of experts out there. So those of you that are like me, that just want to get the experiment done in the ideal fashion and be able to use a tool to take the results once you collect them and figure out what happened, and then finally use those results to reconfigure your process or product to make a better result that advances your company. Find a Python expert to help you with the scripting, and you'll be good to go. So here's one of the top experts right here. This is Hank Anderson. And for more details on this Python integration with Staties 360, go back to the website address I gave you earlier for webinars and just look up this presentation on Python. So in conclusion, I hope that people that are currently using DESIGNEXPERT will consider widening their horizons by upgrading to the Staties 360. And those of you that are not using Staties software, why not come right in and get a trial download of the 360 to begin with, and then you may find that it's well worth it to stay with that highest level, or you might, just go with the core of the DOE tools that come with the DESIGNEXPERT. But with the 360, you're going to get some commanding new features that I've been demonstrating. The last thing I showed is the scripting for the Python. And then before that, I talked about the space filling designs and Gaussian process models that make the most from these deterministic computer experiments. And then there's some other advanced features that you might look into, particularly for those of you that are data analysts or advanced, practitioners of design of experiments. So here's a link that you want to go to if you don't have any Staties software at this point, the 3wstaties.com/trial/SE360. Those of you that are listening to the presentation, you'll get a little helpful email back from Torgrim and the crew at AlphaSoft, with some of these links that I provided to them to pass along to you. And if you're already using DESIGNEXPERT, then again, go back for the trial, and there's some special deals during this introductory period. Contact our sales team, sales@staties.com, and they can help you migrate. So that concludes my presentation. I thank you for listening, and I really hope that you'll make progress with these design of experiments tools. Thank you for attending.